be starting this Global Services Forum, this first session, which is a pre-session. And actually, after this session, there will be the high-level webinar that is the official kickoff of the Global Services Forum. And just a few household remarks. This webinar has simultaneous translation from English to Spanish and Spanish to English. So please use the button at the bottom of your screen. You will find a small sign where you can change from English to Spanish. And also we have sign language, as you can see at the screen. I would also like to invite the panelists of this session to stick to their 7 minutes limit for their intervention, so we can all maintain the session within 1 single hour. And now I would like to start with the opening remarks. And first I would like to introduce myself as well. My name is Nano Mulder. I am the chief of the International Trade Unit within the Trade and Integration Division of ECLAC. And it is a great pleasure again to be here. And I would like to pass the floor now on to Marce Gomez, who is the project manager of the ADELA program within the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung based in Panama in Latin America. Marce, please go ahead with the opening remarks. Thank you.
Muy buenos días a todos y todas. Es un gusto que nos puedan acompañar el día de hoy en esta actividad, como la sesión de la presentación del libro de gobernanza que hemos realizado en conjunto con la CEPAL. También es un gusto tener aquí a todos los diferentes autores que han realizado este libro y que nos van a presentar lo que han realizado en este espacio. El poder presentar este libro en inglés también nos permite el poder brindar mayor información y en esta interacción que se brinda entre nuestra región con otros espacios del mundo. Para la Fundación Konrad Adenauer es un gusto poder participar en este tipo de espacios, crear información y conocimiento, al igual que intercambio entre todos nosotros. Entre nuestros ejes para el programa regional Alianzas para la Democracia y el Desarrollo con Latinoamérica, justo es nuestro objetivo. En nuestros ejes serían el tema de comercio internacional, multilateralismo, al igual que la Agenda 2030 y el trabajo que realizamos en Panamá. De este motivo, nuevamente agradecerles a todos y todas por su participación y me gustaría agradecerles y que disfruten esta sesión, al igual que nuestro libro pueden accederlo tanto en la página de la Fundación como en la página de la CEPAL. Así que le devuelvo la palabra ahora a nuestra moderadora del día de hoy, a la señora Karina Fernández Stark, para que podamos comenzar. Muchas gracias a todos y todas.
Thank you, Marce and Nano. It's a great pleasure for me be here and present our book in English that now is available in the website and everybody can access. Today we're going to have a roundtable. We have several authors of the book. This work has been carried out by national experts in the field of modern services. The chapters includes Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, Peru, Uruguay, and the special guest of India. And the main purpose of this book is to analyze the extent to which policies to promote the export of modern services are based on good governance principles. And secondly, is to observe how these good governance principles are linked to lesser or greater success in the export activity. So I'm going to give you a regional context about the modern services. It's proving that has been one of the most dynamic exports sector worldwide in the last decade. And for that reason, several regions from Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, and less extent Africa has been involved and they want to participate in the modern services sector. And Latin America has been one of them. And since the year 2000 has been embarking in this industry. The participation is still marginal, has been growing. However, the global market share of the exports is just 1.8%. If we compare it with products or goods, that is 5.4%, we see how marginal is the participation. So the good news is that there is a space to grow and continue expanding. But going into the book, we analyze the governance. But when we talk about governance, what is this concept? We refer to the formal and informal interaction, collaboration, coordination between public and private stakeholders, established for the purpose of making decisions, implementing policies, and also evaluating the results. We base the framework of the book in the principles established by Devlin and Mojigensky. There are 9 principles, but they can be summarized in 3 that were analyzed in each of the chapters. These principles are: the first one, adopt a proactive national strategic vision in the medium and long term. The second, really important, is create a public and private alliances and seek consensus to reach this goal. And third, produce and achieve the capacities for implementation. So some of these findings, we see that we can group in different countries because not all behave the same. We see some very good governance practices in the case of Costa Rica and Uruguay, in which the strategy and coordination was very well organized. And we see also the results. In the case of Costa Rica, the exports in this area, in the modern services, has grown at annualized rate of 18% during the last decade. Another set of countries, Brazil and Mexico, in the last 20 years, they have had sporadic programs. But we know those are large countries with a huge domestic market. So the focus has been mainly done internally. Then another interesting case that offer us important lessons are the case of Argentina and Chile. This is important because of the continuity of the sectoral policies. In several cases, they were launched a strategy and also alliances between the public and the private sector. However, they were dismantled in the next administration. So we can observe the lack of continuity has been affecting the performance of exports. And in the case of Chile, has a peak at the beginning of the 2010, however, then enter into a plateau. Then another group of countries is Colombia and Peru, that no specific policies has been designed for the export of modern services. However, lately, Colombia has been more active and have had good results. Finally, we have India, that is among the leader in the developing countries in the export of modern services. Here, the private sector has played a tremendous role with NASCOM, the Industry Association, and the government has been established the basis for this development. But also in the last decade, we have seen a pretty active role from the government. So exports, we know that has been growing exponentially over the last 2 or 3 decades. Some also of the main finding is that governance plays a big role, and that has been a deficit in Latin America. There is a need for a strategy that is going to orient the increase of the export in modern services in the medium and long term. As well, is important the coordination among these stakeholders, public and private stakeholders, and of course, the implementation of programs. Also, we realized that the policies related to human capital development has been the basis for the upgrading of the global value chain in modern services. So after this brief introduction, I'm going to present our panelists is Laura Ortiz from Costa Rica, Prati Agarwal from India, Andres Lopez from Argentina, and Felipe Munoz from Chile. And also I want to let the audience know that we're going to be taking questions to the end, so you can pose your question and we will take them for the panelists. So now I'm going to give the floor to Laura Ortiz. She's the Senior Research Analyst of the Costa Rican Investment Promotion Agency, CINDE. Laura, we know that Costa Rica is the largest per capita exporter of modern services in Latin America. Can you please explain what are the main underlying reasons for this success, particularly regarding the long-standing formal and informal public and private coordination mechanism for key support policies? So, Laura, you have 7 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Karina. Yes, so I will begin by giving a little context of how Costa Rica got to this point. We may be a very services-oriented economy right now, but this was not always the case. So several decades ago, Costa Rica undertook this pursuit of growth, very focused on foreign direct investment, which led to very significant changes in Costa Rica's trade specialization. We used to be a very small economy, which exported traditional products like coffee, bananas, sugar. But through this FDI-focused attraction strategy, Costa Rica was able to transform and enhance its exports, completely changing the economy. One very significant event was the arrival of Intel, which is a major ICT company that arrived to Costa Rica in the late 1990s, which helped put the country on the map as a place for foreign direct investment and completely changed the country's exports and its history. Fast forward to today, and now we have over 190 multinational services companies, which are now exporting services and employing over 81,000 people, which may not sound like a lot, but in a small country like Costa Rica is very significant. As a result, foreign investment has skyrocketed the demand for improved education and has elevated our standards of training and improved the continuous learning among employees, among their management practices, and has also improved the production means of the country as well. This also means that the business environment of the country has improved as well. This has resulted in a positive impact in the quality of the workforce as well. In recent years, the FDI has funneled mostly into services operations like corporate business processes and digital technologies. This includes mostly shared services centers, which have grown exponentially in the last decade, business process outsourcing, contact centers, software development centers, among many other similar types of operations. Multinational companies use these types of modern technologies, which means that they require highly skilled staff, and therefore they pay a lot of attention to Costa Rica's workforce education level. As a result, the services sector has grown alongside with the quality of Costa Rica's workforce, and this has had a lot of impact with the transformation of Costa Rica's education sector, and it has also had a lot of knowledge transfer. It has a lot of positive externalities with Costa Rica's labor force. The Costa Rican workers have also seen a need for a constant improvement and upgrading of their skills, which we have seen that they have noticed there is a need for constantly upgrading their skills to become more competitive, because they are now competing in what has become a global labor market and not a Costa Rican labor market. So we have seen a lot of these positive externalities. Also, the presence of so many of these multinational companies, which have so many of these global leaders, has resulted in more productive workforce. They bring more productivity into the country. So they are bringing this cultural organization and this mentality, which means that they can be more productive with the same amount of inputs, so they can generate higher revenues with the same level of inputs. So this results in a feedback loop for growth that results in a powerful signaling tool also for other foreign companies that currently do not have operations in Costa Rica. This means that the presence of so many of these services companies in Costa Rica shows to other companies, services companies that are currently not operating in Costa Rica, see that they are being successful in the country, so they are coming by themselves. They approach CINDE, they have a project, they see that shared services operations are being successful here. So this is a powerful signaling tool that shows that the countries are reliable business hosts. We are attracting more companies to establish these kinds of operations. However, this also comes with its challenges. The quality workforce is a strong suit, but given the fast-paced growth of the sector, it means that the labor supply not necessarily can keep up with the demand of the multinational companies. The services operations are leaning more towards higher value-added services, more knowledge-based services. This means that the exports are growing, yes, but also that the human capital requirements are changing fast. The companies are requiring more specialization, they're requiring more certifications from their employees, they are even requiring more languages. Now, companies do not only require English skills, but they also require Portuguese, French, German. So this is becoming a challenge for the country where we are struggling to meet the labor demand. So this is where this articulation from CINDE, from the education sector, from the government comes into play, both in terms of the technical and secondary education, as well as at the university level. There are some efforts led by CINDE, the Investment Promotion Agency of Costa Rica, where we work with the multinational companies to get to know what are their needs, what types of skills they're struggling to find in the market, and we communicate these needs or what are they struggling to find to the academic sector or to the learning centers. So we work as a kind of middleman. We are also working to make sure that the curriculum of the education sector is updated as to make sure that the level of sophistication required by the multinational companies is constantly updated in the education sector. The Investment Climate Department of CINDE also has several working groups to make sure that this connection between the private sector and the government and the sector needs are met. This level of involvement by CINDE would not be possible without this strategy Costa Rica has laid out in pursuit of foreign investment and trade goals. This is based specifically on the objectives that the government established. This is a very specific public-private alliance laid out by the government in the National Development Plan, which includes specific goals like the export of services, foreign direct investment focused on high value-added services, free trade agreements, among many other related topics. These goals are pursued through a highly successful public-private partnership between the Foreign Trade Ministry, which is the arm of the government, the Export Promotion Agency, which is a non-state public agency, and CINDE, which is a private, non-profit, non-governmental agency, but we are the only investment promotion agency of Costa Rica. So although we are private and in a political organization, we're able to function very well with the government because we can work through all the government cycles. We have a very, we are very, we can take a step back and we can work independently but very successfully and communicate very, very efficiently with both the private sector, in this case, the multinational companies, gain the trust of the multinational companies, but also have the trust of the government and the external sector, which is mostly in this case, Procomer, which is the entity which is in charge of all this, the free trade zone and all this, so which this is the key to the success in this case of the external sector, the export
Thank
service.
you.
Now, yes, I'll finish. I'm sorry, I went over.
Thank you, Laura, for your time. Now we're going to give the floor to Andres Lopez. He's a professor of University of Buenos Aires, Argentina. Andres, we know that Argentina is the second largest exporter of modern services in the region, according to official data. Can you please explain the key support instruments for this sector, especially the ones related to software, and what good or bad role and governance and the coordination mechanism has played in the development of the sector? You have 7 minutes.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be part of this panel. The software sector in Argentina in the 90s had already a development oriented to the domestic market. There were many local firms that attended the domestic market, and mainly for the telecom and the finance sector. Then in the 20s, the exports of software and other modern services like BPO and others had a huge growth. And for instance, in the case of software, they went from zero to almost $1,800 million in 2010, 2011. And this was, of course, the result of many factors. First, the existing capacities that were, as I mentioned, they were already programmers and people and experts in software, in software programming and other tools, and there were already local firms already consolidated. But of course, Argentina attracted also many investments from multinational firms that took advantage of the fact that wages in Argentina after the crisis of 2001 were depressed in terms of US dollars, so there was a cost advantage. And there was also another legal or regulatory instrument that also promoted software exports, that was the so-called Ley de Software, the software law that granted a number of fiscal incentives to software firms, to export-oriented software firms. That law was approved in 2004. And so you had existing capacities, you had this law that granted fiscal incentives, and the fact that wages, at least in the first years of the 20s, of the first decade of this century, were low in terms of US dollars. This process had a characteristic that still exists, which is that demand for labor was also ahead of the supply of labor, because the number of people available for working in software firms did not grow at the same rate that the demand for labor posts for software export firms. And so the government, different governments at different times adopted measures, sometimes in combination with the private sector, aimed at launching training programs for enhancing the availability of people trained in software programming and other tools. So, as you mentioned in the introduction, the problem is that many of these training programs were very dependent of the government cycle. So there are a number of instruments that were launched under a certain administration, and then they were closed when this administration leaves and another administration took office. So we had this is a syndrome that is very, very characteristic of Argentina's productive policy. The symptom of starting all over again when someone new takes office. So takes office. So this was of course something that prevented perhaps these training programs to have full force, because they are discontinued from time to time, and then a new program starts. However, they had some impact, and nowadays the government has launched just another version of this kind of program, aimed also at software, training new programmers, of new software programmers. And the other thing that was stable during all this period was the software law. This law that grants fiscal incentives for software-oriented firms. But again, you can see this problem of the discontinuity of policies, because this law, as I said before, was adopted in 2004. Then it was renewed in 2014, and it had another extension until 2019. In that year, the government, the Macri administration that was in office at that time, launched a new law called the knowledge economy law, that extended these fiscal incentives to other sectors, including other modern services sectors, such as business process outsourcing and research and development, engineering, etc. And this law was approved in 2019. So the fiscal incentives that were only the software firms were the only beneficiaries of these incentives. These incentives were extended to other modern services firms, but also to other knowledge-intensive sectors like biotechnology, nanotechnology, nuclear sector, etc. But what was the problem? The law was approved almost by unanimity at the Congress in 2019. Then a new administration takes office in the end of 2019. The law is reformed, and a new version is approved in 2020 by the House Chamber, the Chamber of Diputados, as we call it. And this new version was also approved by unanimity. Then the law passed to the Senate, and the law was changed. And so it returned to the House, and then the final version was approved. So you had 3 laws in 2 years, on less than 2 years. So the laws, this final version also grants attractive fiscal incentives, but these changes do not help to create credibility for foreign investors, because seemingly, well, you have a law, but another law can change the previous law. So the benefits are not as stable as you think they should be. And so I think that perhaps this stability of rules, joined with the fact that wages in US dollars had a huge increase in the last decade, due to the appreciation of the local currency, and also because of macroeconomic instability in Argentina, you had a peak of Argentina's share in the world software market around 2011, 2012, and then the share of Argentina's in the global market began to decrease, and it had up and downs, but currently Argentina's share is more or less the same that it had in 2008, perhaps. So we lost part of the gains that we had in the first decade of the 20th century. So I think that this is something that can be attributed. You don't need, but perhaps the message is, if I can give a message, perhaps it's very bold, but is that if you have institutional and macroeconomic stability, even if you have capabilities, because Argentina has capabilities, and well, the software sector at the end is as other modern services sector is affected by this kind of process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Andres, for sharing the experience of Argentina and in modern services. Now I'm going to give the floor to Felipe Munoz. Felipe is the professor of the Institute of International Studies of University of Chile, and he's going to share the experience of Chile. But here I have a question for you. We observe a rapid growth during the first decade of this century in Chile, but later the country entered in a plateau for the export of modern services. May this trend be related to changes in the coordination mechanism and related to policies toward the sector?
Thanks, Karina, for your question. Thanks to the organizers for this invitation for us to present our chapter in this important book. Regarding your question on the factors that determine the services, exports of services in Chile, and particularly why this sector has not been capable of expand as it was expected, particularly during the first years of this century. We, together with Professor Dorotea Lopez, looked into the institutional framework within the country and the policies that had been implemented to boost the activities of services sector. And as you, Karina, had clearly pointed out, we had identified that there is a lack of coordination and institutional mechanisms to that could help promote these kind of services expansion. What we can see from the Chilean case is that first we have, let's say, the realization that the non-neutrality policy, economic policy that has been implemented for many decades in the country was not sufficient to promote the development of an services export sector.
Recording in progress.
While there has been, this policy was quite attractive and quite relevant to promote traditional export services like mining, agriculture, and another commodity-based or natural resources-based sectors, there was a need to implement new strategies and new policies to catch up with the services sector. Particularly with modern services exports. And here it's what we can look in the early 2000s, when some policies regarding the tailor-made policies for services were starting to be implemented. We could identify export promotion policies, particularly the sectoral brands that tried, even though they started in goods, they move into services to try to look to the specific problems and challenges that this sector needed. But mainly, we identified the cluster for the development of modern services policy implemented during the first term of President Bachelet between 2006 and 2010. And as well as Andres was just mentioning for the Argentinian case, we can see the same pattern in Chile. The change in government administrations derive in changes in policies. And for productive policies, particularly for services policies um, to be implemented and to have a real impact on the economic and transform the productive sector, there is a need of long-term policies that have not been implemented in the country. The global services cluster was discontinued in 2010 when the first Piñera's administration came into office, and this was a huge backdrop in in the work regarding services. Nevertheless, every administration for the last couple of decades has identified services as an important part of this new economic development model for the Chilean for Chile, identifying the need of moving forward from natural resources and looking into services as an alternative to bring good jobs, better quality of life, wages, among others. But and here I try to answer your question. We can see that there is a huge problem of coordination between public and private agencies regarding the promotion of modern services export sector. So the governance of this kind of policies is quite weak. There are many institutions related, particularly many public institutions related to the development of this sector, going from Corfo, from the Ministry of Economy, Chile, and the Undersecretariat for International Economic Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There's institutions within the Finance Ministry as the Internal Revenue Services, the National Customs Services, and each one is working on their own pace, on their own agenda, even though there is it has been implemented a coordination table from both public and private sector agents. We can still identify that this coordination is weak, that each agency is working on their own agendas, on their own goals. And while that's not a problem in itself, the problem becomes that having small budgets and being a small country that needs um, to promote this sector on a worldwide scale and compete with big markets and with big firms and economies. This fragmentation of public support and of policies regarding the support to the services export sector lead to a dispersion, duplication of efforts, and finally reduce in the support to this kind of companies and to these kind of sectors. Hence, our main recommendation is that on two fronts. First, there's a need to look into long-term policies regarding this sector. So policies that could go beyond one administration and really give the private and public sector, because this is a problem not only for companies but also for public officials, to have a long-term opportunity view window to implement these kind of policies and to really go for these kind of sectors. And second, the need to really coordinate and strengthen the coordination between public agencies. There is too much duplication of activities, and most of the activities are being held in the low stream of the value chain, and there's no possibility to upstream or to expand the sector in a worldwide class. That's what's needed for development. So thank you very much. I'm open to any questions, and thanks, Karina.
Thank you, Felipe. Just in time, 7 minutes. Excellent. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Prachi, our WOW. We know that India is the leader among developing countries in the export of modern services. Its success was mostly the result of multiple firms that get together and associate in this group called NASCOM. And also they start working with the government. However, in the last decade, we see that the public sector has played an increasing role in the development of the industry. If you can explain us in more detail, how has been the evolution and the situation in India regarding the governance in the institutions?
Thanks, Karina, for the question, and thanks to the organizers for having me today. Congratulations to everyone for the release of the book in English. Now, to answer your question, Karina, the growth in services sector has been an organic process that began in the 1960s and accelerated in the late 1980s, despite the absence of any deliberate policy. The expansion of the modern services sector in India was at the time driven primarily by the organized private sector itself, made up of several IT companies like Tata Consultancy Services, Wipro, Infosys, and HCL, which have now captured the global market as well. They had gained a lot of global presence at the time by providing ancillary business services solutions to developed countries. Given that in the 2000s, this sector represented about 60 to 70% of the GDP, the central government decided at the time to design specific policies to develop the sector further. And that was supplemented by the economic liberalization agenda that was implemented in 1991 under the IMF, that gave the necessary boost to the export sector of business process outsourcing. Recently, the government has begun to look at the services sector in an integrated way as a result of the increase in their marketability. The increase of exports of services, called the Export Connect, acted as a point of union. And in the last 10 years, there has been an increase in government intervention in the management of these services. Over the next two decades, India became the world leader in outsourcing modern services. And the spread of ICT also contributed to rapid evolution into new businesses, exports, research and development, as well as innovation. So naturally, the government recognized this change in the content of services and underlined the importance of the sector because of the role they already played in the economy, in GDP, employment, as well as export revenue, as well as FDI. So today, the government policy acts as a driver of the industry. Its role has changed from being just a mere regulator to becoming an innovator and facilitator today. So in India, the central and the state government design policies, sometimes together or separately, that span over various ministries and departments in association with industry-led organizations like NASCOM, as well as other regulatory institutes. So like you mentioned, NASCOM is the National Association of Software and Service Companies that works in conjugation with the government to address growing skill gaps through continuous skill improvement. At the same time, it also works with the Ministry of Electronics and Informatics, for example, and its advice is usually incorporated in formulation of most of the policies for the ICT sector in India. It is also responsible for resolving disputes between companies inside the industry as well. So along these lines, public-private partnerships have taken a formal path in terms of consultations and implementation of strategies through various agencies. To highlight some of these excellent programs that the government has started in the last few years, the first one is the Skill India initiative that offers quality education and professional skills for IT-enabled services sector. This works in tandem with the National Corporation for Skill Development, for example, which is created to adapt to international standards as well as coordinate private initiatives in this area. On the digital policy side, India has the program, which is called the Digital India Mission, which aims to digitize the provision of services and includes e-governance, public internet access program, universal access to mobile connectivity, IT for jobs, and information for all. Next, the Atal Innovation Mission, as well as the Startup India Mission, have been designed to promote entrepreneurship and innovation, also promoting startups in the IT sector. As well as, in addition to that, there have been something called software technology parks, which was started way back in 1991, almost 30 years ago, to promote exports from software exports from the country. This policy has been upgraded in the next recently into another policy, but not going to the details of that. The Department of Commerce also recognizes 12 champion sectors that includes IT-enabled services to enable the sector to exploit its export potential. And there's also the organization called the Services Export Promotion Council that organizes trade fairs as well as acts as a liaison between the government and the private sector. Finally, there is a Make in India initiative, which is more aimed towards manufacturing, but they have recognized the importance the IT and business process management sector has played. And it also aims to promote electronic and computer hardware to supplement the exports of the software industry in India. So this is on the central government side, right? So now on the state governments compete with each other to attract investments and incentivize companies to establish operations in their territories. For example, states of Andhra Pradesh, Delhi, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and Telangana have been very active in attracting multinational IT companies, startups and other companies through subsidized land, low-cost energy, liberalized labor laws, and skill development programs. So hence you see that the central government, the state government, and industry-led associations like NASCOM work in tandem to promote the modern services sector in India through a series of interministerial meetings and interrelations they have developed over the years. While this obviously has not always been the case, this is a very recent development where the government took an initiative. So today, the country is home to more than 16,000 IT companies and 8,000 startups that offers an ecosystem which is ready for collaboration and alliances. The rapid growth of exports of these services has been mainly facilitated by the high quality of professionals, soft skills, exposure to cutting edge technologies, especially fluency in English, which has been the main driving factor for outsourcing services in India. Dynamic domestic demand, as well as the focus on technology innovation. So I think in the future, national and subnational policies aimed at incorporating more technology and knowledge and added value in export sector is the way forward for modern services to have a dynamic future, as well as for India to close the gap in success of the developed countries. So thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Prachi. Now we have some questions from the audience. One of the question is from Laura from Costa Rica. If you can explain us a little bit deeper this relationship and this coordination that has been very strong between CINDE, the private sector, and also COMEX, and I don't know any other actor. How you work together? What is this relationship?
Yes, so, well, we work together, especially three institutions, which is COMEX, which is the Foreign Ministry of Trade, Procomer, which is the Export Promotion Agency, and CINDE, which is us, the Investment Promotion Agency. COMEX is mostly the branch of the government which oversees. They have, for example, the mandate from the government. They lay out the goals from the National Development Plan, for example, what the current administration lays out. For example, we have whatever number they set out, the current administration for exports, for foreign direct investment, whatever they set out. Some administrations have more ambitious goals, others are more conservative. Then there is Procomer, which is the Export Promotion Agency. They are non-state, but they are public. And Procomer is, we like to say, they are our cousin, because we work a little more closely with Procomer because they are also the agency which is in charge of managing the free trade zone regime. So we have to work a lot with Procomer because most of the companies that send their trucks into the country operate under the free trade zone regime. So we have to work a lot with them, and we also do a lot of work, for example, in the background, a lot of since many of these companies operate under the free trade zone regime, we do a lot of research, a lot of data to support the free trade zone regime. There are certain sectors of the public or politicians that do not support the free trade zone regime in Costa Rica. So we do a lot of research to support it, and it is the only, I think, the only set of incentives that has this type of research to support it. So there is a lot of work that goes into that. And then there is INDE, which is the cousin that is private, but we have a mandate to work with them. So a lot of people in the public collective think that population think that INDE is a government agency, but we are not, because we work a lot with all of these government agencies. Because we have a very public mandate, the government and Procomer give us these goals. We have officially this mandate by the government to pursue this foreign direct investment goals. The COMEX gives us these objectives for the projects. They audit the foreign direct investment. Yes, they set a goal for the number of projects INDE has to attract to Costa Rica. So it is very close. We are very intertwined, and we have to keep up. We have to inform a lot of what we are doing to them. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. I have another question regarding the COVID, the pandemic. If this has meant something for the industry, the development of the sector, do you have any latest data or at least informal
yes, of course,
information? This is a question open to everybody, Laura, también also to Prachi, Andres, and Felipe. I don't know if, but Laura, you can go ahead.
Yes, of course, we were greatly affected. Actually, we had to do a little modification to the free trade zone regime because it does not allow for the equipment that is registered under the free trade zone regime to be taken out. And since a lot of the companies had to send their people home, especially the services companies, because manufacturing, obviously, they were not going to do work from home. So all of the services companies, especially since we have our biggest employer right now is Amazon, and they grew exponentially. It's now a beast here in Costa Rica. If I'm not mistaken, it is the biggest employer, not of multinational companies, but of the country. So we had to do a modification for that, and it's now becoming permanent because many of the companies, you may all, I think it's becoming a world trend. It's not only exclusive to Costa Rica. This is here to stay. The pandemic is not going away anytime soon, and people want to stay working from home. So that provision the law had to be changed so people can stay working from home, and a lot of the things from like health sector, the health insurance, for example, it had to be modified. So there was a lot of work from CINDE to be talking with the health authorities, with the government, a lot of stuff. But the services companies here actually grew a lot because we had a lot of work coming in. Companies like Amazon, that's the greatest example, or like Sykes, which is also a contact center that grew a lot here. So yes, we had a lot of growth due to the pandemic.
Excellent, interesting.
Yes.
Any other answer, Andres, Prachi? some effects of the pandemic in the sector?
Well, the same happened here with work from home, but here in Argentina we have a curious problem. The employment in the sector apparently grew during the last year, but this was not reflected in exports because we have a control. The exchange rate market is controlled, so firms perhaps are exporting, but the money is not coming here because if they bring their dollars here, they must exchange for pesos at the official exchange rate. So it's better for them to perhaps make the bill to another destination where they have real dollars. So that's another question. That's not another relevant question for issue for the trading services. It's different from trading goods. You cannot export from Argentina. You cannot export. You cannot export from Argentina a car from Argentina to Germany and then send the money to Italy or Ireland. But you can do that in services because services are intangible. So there are no customs, and so that's an interesting feature of trading services. The origin and the destination of the service you export perhaps do not coincide with the flow of money, because it's easier to change the placing where the bills are paid at the end. So there is a mismatch between the evolution of employment and the evolution of exports. Employment has gone up, exports have gone down, perhaps due to that fact, and also perhaps because freelancers have grown in 2020. We don't have hard data on that, but from anecdotal evidence, we know that many people went to freelance modality to export modern services.
Excellent, thank you, Andres. Yeah, we are observing many changes and transformation, and the COVID is going to bring this transformation to stay, not just in the short term. So we're going to need to adapt. But now we are ready to close this seminar. What we observe is that Latin America has a tremendous opportunity to continue expanding in the modern services sector. And a critical point is how a good governance can help to meet these goals, how having a long-term strategy and coordinated stakeholders may lead to the growth of this modern services industry. So I want to thank everybody, all the panelists, and also the audience and the organizers. And let's continue with the forum. Thank you so much.